Parabellum is a 2019 American neo-noir action thriller film directed by Chad Stahelski. The movie begins with the protagonist, John Wick, trying to flee to Manhattan. He had killed a high-table crime lord, Santino D'Antonio, on the 42nd floor of New York's Continental Hotel, which is considered neutral ground. A bounty of $14 million is set on his head. John reaches a square, and the thought of his enemies trying to kill him echoes in his mind. He hires a taxi to go away, but there is too much traffic on the road to drive the car out of the place. John gives a gold coin to the taxi driver and instructs him to drive his dog to the Continental Hotel. After that, John exits the taxi and runs towards the New York Public Library. He takes a book and retrieves a marker medallion and a rosary. Moreover, there is also a picture of him and his wife in the book, which he places back after kissing it. Meanwhile, a tall man named Ernest arrives there, and he attacks John with a knife. John retaliated, and they both fought until John killed Ernest with the book. However, during the fight, John also receives some injuries. Afterward, he runs towards a doctor, who does not treat him as his excommunicado activates before the doctor can finish. John then treats himself and takes some medicines from the store. The doctor asks John to injure him, and John shoots him in the stomach and shoulder so that he does not die. John leaves the doctor's place. John is running on the streets and is being pursued by various gangs of assassins. To fight his enemies, John enters a weapons shop to get some guns. However, as John enters the shop, some assassins follow him and attack him. After an intense fight, John kills all the men one by one. On the other side, the taxi driver hands John's dog and the gold coin to Karen, the concierge at the Continental in New York. John then runs towards a stable, and he knows the art of befriending horses. Before John has fled on his horse, some assassins run after him. But John confronts them in the stable with the help of the horse. He sits on the horse's back and gallops it towards the city square while the assassins are chasing him on motorbikes. Shrewdly, John shoots the assassins one by one. Seeing his unbeatable strength, the bounty on his head is raised to $15 million. John meets an old lady named Director, the head of the Ruska Roma crime syndicate. In Ruska Roma, the killers are trained, and John himself has been a student at Ruska Roma. He gives the old lady the rosary and demands safe passage to Casablanca. The rosary has the same value in Ruska Roma as the marker medallion has in High Table. While the director is leading John to her room, he sees the children being trained to fight. On the other side, a girl named the Adjudicator walks up to Karen. She introduces herself and says she has come from High Table to punish all those people who breach the rules of High Table. She meets the owner of the Continental Hotel, named Winston Scott, and complains to him that the rules of High Table have been violated in his hotel in his presence. She says John killed Santino in his hotel and that Winston did nothing to stop John from killing him. Winston replies that John has been punished for his crime and that he has been declared an excommunicado. She accuses Winston of giving John 1 hour to escape after the killing. She says to Winston that he chose John for High Table, which is also a crime as John is a traitor. She threatens him that in 7 days he would be removed from his position and that his hotel would also be relinquished of its status as Continental. After that, the Adjudicator calls in Bowery King for interrogation. She tells him that he knew well before that John was about to kill Santino. She says he provided John with a gun and ammunition to kill Santino even though he knew John was a member of High Table. She gives him 7 days to leave New York, or else he will be killed. King replies he will never leave New York, no matter what the High Table does with him. The Adjudicator leaves Bowery King's place. On the other side, John has arrived in Casablanca and is wandering through the busy markets. To his unfortunate surprise, the assassins do not spare him even in Casablanca. The assassins attack John all at once, but John seems more powerful than before, and he confronts them. Meanwhile, a man comes there and scares away all the assassins. He leads John to a Moroccan Continental Hotel in Casablanca. John meets a lady named Sophia'S, an ex-assassin, a former friend of John, and the manager of the Continental Hotel. Once upon a time, John saved Sophia'S son's life in exchange for her marker medallion. John presents Sophia with the marker to get help from her because, due to his excommunicado status, no one will help him. Although she had promised to help him in his time of need, Sophia now declines to do so. If she helps him, the High Table can kill her and her family. He asks Sophia to take him to the Elder, the only person above the High Table. Sophia reluctantly leads John to Beretta, her former boss. Meanwhile, the adjudicator approaches a Japanese assassin named Zero and orders him to stab the director in both hands as penance for helping Jon. Zero is a dangerous killer who has several other killers working under him. She also tells Zero to kill all those who help Jon escape. After that, Zero, his men, and the adjudicator reach the Ruska Roma syndicate, where they behold the director after killing the guards. The director tells the adjudicator that she helped Jon only because he possessed a rosary. The adjudicator replies that the rosary has no significance for High Table. The director puts her hands forward and says she is ready for the punishment. Zero then stabs the director through both of her hands. On the contrary, Jon and Sophia are on their way to meet Beretta, along with Sophia'S dogs. Finally, they call on Beretta, who seems surprised after seeing Jon. He tells Jon that everywhere people are discussing him because he has violated the rules of High Table. Jon asks Beretta for help, and for that, he will be grateful to him. Jon asks Beretta to direct him to Elder. Beretta tells Jon to go through the desert and keep walking until he passes out. Beretta says once he opens his eyes, he will find himself before Elder. Beretta demands one of Sophia'S dogs in return for helping Jon. Sophia seems hesitant to give away her dog, and hearing this, Beretta is infuriated. He takes out his gun and shoots the dog. Sophia becomes enraged and starts to fight the men of Beretta. A sight of war prevails everywhere, and great exchanges of fire can be seen. Before the man can shoot Sophia, the dog jumps on the man and bites his hands, missing the target. During the fight, Sophia confronts Beretta, and she shoots him in the leg, taking vengeance on him. Beretta's men prove to be a wall, but Sophia and Jon retaliate equally. Sophia'S dogs are also taking part in the fight and killing as many men as they can. Afterward, Sophia and Jon reach the desert, which Beretta had told them about. Jon returns Sophia'S marker medallion, and she goes away in her vehicle, leaving Jon in the desert. After that, Jon keeps walking through the dunes. Meanwhile, the adjudicator and Zero, along with his men, broke into Bowery King's place. Zero and his men are ruthlessly killing King's men. The adjudicator confronts Bowery King, and she threatens King with severe punishment. As for punishment, King's body will be wounded in 7 spots. Zero marks 7 spots on King's body as instructed by the adjudicator. Back in the desert, Jon passes out, and Elder's men take him to Elder on the back of a camel. Jon opens his eyes and finds him before the Elder. Elder asks Jon what he wants, and Jon replies that he wants to spend his life peacefully and with lovely memories of his late wife. The Elders agree to help Jon if he fulfills their wish. Elder wants Jon to kill Winston and remains subservient to the High Table for the remainder of his life. In return, Elder will remove the excommunicado status from his character. Jon goes into depression after hearing the name Winston. To show his fealty, Jon severs his ring finger and gives his wedding ring to the Elder. After that, Jon wears a new suit and sets out toward New York, where Winston lives. In New York, Zero and his men attack Jon. He flees from there on a motorbike, but Zero chases him through the busy roads. Eventually, Jon makes it to the threshold of the Continental Hotel. Before Zero can shoot Jon, Jon places his hand on the threshold of the Continental Hotel, and the receptionist stops Zero from killing Jon because he is now in the jurisdiction of the Continental Hotel. Jon and Zero enter the hotel, and once inside, Jon's dog runs happily toward Jon. After that, Jon approaches Winston at his place. He tells Winston that he has been sent to kill him. Winston gives a gun to Jon and tells him to kill him because he wants to be killed by his friend rather than his enemy. Meanwhile, the adjudicator arrives there, and Jon tells her that he will not kill Winston. She immediately makes a phone call to the administrator and gives the order to relinquish the status of the Continental Hotel as High Table. The adjudicator orders Zero to kill anyone he wants because the Continental Hotel is no longer a part of High Table. Winston leads Jon to his secret room, where he has kept modern weapons. They take weapons and cautiously walk toward their enemies. The assassins attack Jon, and he fights back. There were several men in the hotel with Jon and Winston. Jon confronts Zero's apprentices, and an intense fight takes place. Eventually, Jon kills them. By and by, Jon and Zero come face to face. Zero gives him a tough time, but Jon seems not to give up. Finally, Jon kills Zero, and the adjudicator learns about Zero's death. She learns that Jon is not easily insurmountable, so she contacts Winston. She tells him she can give him his lost position, and his hotel can also retrieve his lost status as High Table if he kills Jon. Winston agrees with her, and he shoots Jon. Jon falls off the building onto the road. Winston is restored to his position, and his hotel is also given the status of high table. After that, the adjudicator leaves the hotel in her car. Winston orders his employees to clean the hotel as, the next moment, the adjudicator returns to Winston, and she tells him that they did not find John's body on the street. She says if he escaped death, it is an alarming situation for them. Winston is sure that John has not exceeded the limits of New York by now. On the other hand, the Bowery King's men bring John to the Bowery King. The king shows John 7 wounds on his body. John is very injured, and he seems very angry. The movie ends there. If you like our video, kindly subscribe our channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the new video. Thanks.